Welcome, everybody, to another NHL offseason discussion video. We've got the San Jose Sharks coming at you today, and joining me is a very, very special guest, my good friend and awesome hockey YouTuber. It's Nick from Twisted Wrister Hockey. I got the shirt out. I am so excited to have you on the channel, Nick, and talk about the Sharks, your team, and just get into what they've done this offseason and where they're headed for this coming year. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
And thank you for inviting me on the show, John. I decided to dress for the occasion as well. So, yeah, if you guys haven't already, pick up some merch for John's channel here. You're almost at 10K, man. I can't wait to see that happen. That's going to be, I would think, as soon as the season starts, right?
Yeah, we're hoping for it to be pretty early on. I appreciate that. And your channel is pushing 5 now, pretty close. So good to see you doing well as well.
Thanks, dude.
All right. So San Jose, this non-playoff team last year, not even really particularly close. Made some major organizational changes this offseason. It seems like they've finally realized that things are probably going to get worse before they get better. They're going to have to go into that rebuild / retool mode a little bit before we're going to see an upswing with this team. New general manager Mike Grier taking over as the GM, new coach with David Quinn coming in, taking over. Just your early thoughts on those two and what they might be able to do at the helm of this organization.
Yeah, in general, I like the Grier signing. Even though he's never been a general manager or an assistant GM, he's worked in a variety of roles, coaching, scouting, and other roles too in hockey. He's worked with like the U.S. development program, I think, for women. So he's had a few different roles, and that's good. We need kind of a new perspective in the organization after Doug Wilson was there for 2 decades, really. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that bringing somebody in from that angle versus, hiring somebody who's been down the path of a general manager, I think that could hopefully lead to, sort of a refocus for the franchise, because they really need it. 3 years of no playoffs, underwhelming development for, the prospect pool, which has been thin. It's getting a little bit better, but yeah, that wasn't, that was, I think, a step not necessarily in the right direction. I think it's gonna take a while to figure it out with the state that this franchise is in. Yeah. But I'm just glad to see something new there. Of course, hoping that Doug Wilson is able to recover for whatever is ailing him, of course. And then David Quinn, I know that certainly there was a lot of criticism for the hire. And so I didn't watch the Rangers too much when he was their head coach. He had some success though, because that team was going through a rebuild. He came in right after they said they were going to tear things down, and they were fairly successful. I am a little concerned about his ability to maybe coach up the younger players, because the Sharks eventually will be a team like that. But it's not like things are going to be much worse just because they brought him in specifically. Mm-hmm. They've got a pretty thin roster and some some contracts that have not aged particularly well. So I focus my criticism primarily with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a huge David Quinn guy, but I think the Sharks are one of those teams that are in a situation right now where it doesn't really matter who the coach is. They're going to be what they're going to be. And I really like the Mike Grier hiring as the general manager. I think he's a great guy to get an opportunity like this. Mm-hmm. Really smart hockey mind, around the game for a long time, was a very solid NHL player, has shifted now into management and has done well with that. So I think the future down the line is bright for the Sharks. I just think it's going to take a little while to get there. It's not something we're going to see within the next 2 years.
And, I hope that when that does come, I think, I would say at least probably 4 years from now, to be honest. But I'm hoping that this is an opportunity for Ryan Warsofsky. Not too many people might know about him, but he, I think, just won the Calder Cup with the Chicago Wolves in the AHL as their head coach. Yep. And everywhere he's gone, he has just had tremendous success. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that as an assistant head coach with the Sharks, that eventually he gets groomed into a head coaching role, because, again, just one of the greater track records without actually being behind an NHL bench as the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely someone that down the line could be could be next in line to take that spot. And then as the team gets better, you get a coach like that who's had AHL success and a lot of success in the lower levels. And then you can really hit the ground running sometimes with a combination like that. I really think San Jose did more of their bigger moves with trades more so than free agency this offseason in the situation that they're in. The biggest one was certainly sending Brent Burns to Carolina and at least unloading some of that money. They did have to retain some salary there, but it's certainly a heck of a lot better than having to, continue to, be a struggling team with that contract on the books. And Burns goes to the Canes along with Lane Peterson for Steven Lorentz, Eetu Makaniemi, and a conditional third-round pick in the 2023 draft. So that was definitely a major move for the Sharks to move on from Brent Burns, who, had a lot of success over the years with San Jose, but certainly had gone downhill the last few seasons along with the team.
Yeah, it was interesting in that I don't think that they would have felt as pressured to move Burns had they last year traded Tomas Hertl. I think that, that was an opportunity for them to, ease themselves into a better salary cap situation eventually, because now Hertl's being paid basically the same amount that Burns is. And not to mention he's, going to enter the season at nearly 29 years old too. So anyway, with Burns moving on, of course, it's going to be exciting watching him in Carolina, especially if he plays with Jacob Slavin. I could talk about that forever, I mean, they relieve themselves of, I think Cap Friendly has it at just over $6 million. And that helped the Sharks in terms of signing players just to really fill out the roster going into training camp. And then they can make additional cuts from there. So it was something that eventually had to be done. They ripped off the Band-Aid with it. They weren't trying to finesse the perfect deal, I don't think, because the return isn't all that great, to be honest. But again, it's really just to clear some cap space so that you can fill out the roster, have players compete for positions further down the lineup. And then eventually that will get occupied by, some of the younger talents in the prospect pool.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other trade that they made, I thought was kind of an interesting one, given the spot that the Sharks are in right now. That was acquiring Luke Cunningham from the Nashville Predators in exchange for John Leonard and a third-round pick in 2023, and then subsequently signing Cunningham to a 2-year deal at $2.75 million per season. He's 24 years old, still on the younger side, certainly brings an edge to his game. One of those kind of third line level players, hasn't really reached the potential that was thought when he first came into the league, originally with the Wild, then with Nashville, and now he's on his third team already at 24 years old and just really hasn't reached that level. He certainly seems though like he might get a chance to play some more minutes and play a bigger role in the Sharks lineup this year.
That is possible. Yeah, when that trade went down, a lot of people weren't fans of it. If you look at like those J Fresh hockey cards,
it's not sparkling.
Right. But then you consider that, okay, he put up, I think, like 14 goals this past season on a third line.
Yeah.
He's scored upwards of 18 goals in a similar role with Minnesota. So that's good. I mean, like, look, really with us, we're so thin at pretty much every position that's not necessarily a bad deal if he could play along somebody like Nick Bonino or Nico Sturm even, who are good defensive centers further down the lineup. So I personally don't mind that move all that much. The third that we traded away stings a little bit, but we got that third from Carolina. So it's not all that bad. And again, it's all about competition. You want to really push some of the younger players for the Sharks. I know that Cunningham, of course, is only just 24, but you want somebody like Ozzy Weisblatt to have a chance to audition for a role maybe next year. He's still, I think, only about 20 years old, but he was a first-round draft pick. And so you want him looking at Luke Cunningham and saying, hey, I can do everything he can offensively and defensively. I am more responsible out there. So I'm hoping that a contract like that will really light a fire under some of those prospects' butts.
Yeah, speaking of young players, I want to talk about William Eklund because he's obviously probably the shining star prospect for this team right now. And got his little look at the beginning of last year, but eventually went back to Sweden, played in the SHL, had a pretty solid year, put up some decent point totals for a teenager in that particular league, where teenagers usually don't light up the score sheet the way they do in junior hockey. And he said, this summer that his goal is to make the Sharks this season. He did not play in the World Juniors that they just had in August, because he wanted to focus solely on making San Jose and being NHL ready. I think Eklund is hopefully going to make the team this year. I think if he has a good preseason, he will. But I just wanted your thoughts on Eklund, and is he ready to make an impact at the NHL level?
Well, I think that one way that he can show that he's ready is to accept body contact more. If there was one thing I noticed besides, of course, his vision, when he did play in the NHL this past season in those 9 games, it was that he did shy away from physical contact. So, and I mean, that's something that can be corrected for a lot of players. I think you see, when they're still kind of physically maturing, when they're in their early adult years, they are capable of adding, muscle and sustaining that through, and I think that he's probably worked on that to some extent as well. I just haven't really read into it all that much. But again, I think that the Sharks did bring in guys, Cunningham, Lorentz, Nico Sturm, and there are a couple other smaller pieces that were acquired and signed in this offseason. And I don't think that those are necessarily locks for a roster spot necessarily. Noah Gregor was just signed today too. So could Eklund come in there and have a good camp and maybe take a roster spot from somebody like Noah Gregor? I think it's certainly possible, but he does have to, I think, perform at a level that we haven't seen yet from him in Teal specifically. Yeah,
I would definitely agree with that. And going on the sometimes shying away from contact with Fabian Lysell, who's bought one of Boston's top prospects. They sent him to play in the WHL this past season, and it looks like going from Sweden, coming over, kind of learning the North American game and playing in the WHL, which is the most rough and tumble of the Canadian junior leagues. And he looks like a new player with his ability to take physical contact and not shy away from that part of the game. That's very, eventually you're going to have to learn if you're going to be successful in the NHL. So definitely that's something that I think, especially for European prospects, sometimes is an adjustment. And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch Eklund in the preseason, in those games when he's out there against, big bodies, NHL level guys. How does he handle that? And that's going to be a big test as to whether or not he plays in San Jose this season or not.
I think so. If it doesn't work out for him in the preseason, I think that there is a benefit to him, like you were saying, learning the North American game, maybe
AHL.
Without quite as much. Yeah, in the AHL. And I think that one benefit of that too is possibly to, develop chemistry with some other players who might, be NHLers in a year or two as well. I think Thomas Bordeleau might actually be a roster spot player day one for the Sharks. He had a really good World Juniors for Team USA, but the opportunity to maybe play with guys like Brandon Coe, who had a great season in the OHL, Tristan Robbins from the WHL had a really good year for Saskatoon, Daniil Gushchin, and I mentioned Ozzy Weisblatt earlier. So I hope that, this season we start to see a core forming at the AHL level that will eventually translate to the NHL level. But the Sharks have been one of the worst teams at actually executing that for what seems to be like at least a decade in the making. So I hope that can start to change as well. They've got John McCarthy as a head coach there. I think that's his first full season, I want to say. And the CUDA are going to be actually probably more entertaining to watch if some of those players are on the roster. Yeah, for sure. Other than that, I think it was mostly kind of depth pieces for the Sharks. They brought in Matt Benning and Marcus Nudivara on the back end, Nico Sturm, as you mentioned, Oscar Lindblom up front. Capo Kakinen's back in goal. I definitely think that he's going to get a chance to play a significant number of games. Steven Lorentz, who came over
in the Burns deal, gets signed to a 2-year deal. He's kind of a fourth line type guy. So it seems like the Sharks have kind of filled out that roster and, left some room for some good competition with some of these younger guys that will be looking for spots. And I've kind of feel like the Sharks for a long time didn't want to admit that they were at this point where they kind of needed to strip it down and start a retool. And it seems like now they finally, Mike Greer's come in and said, hey, this is where we're at. There's no way around it. We're going to, have to deal with some lousy years for a little while, but we need to focus on 4 or 5 years down the line and coming out on the other side in a really solid position.
Absolutely. Now, the downside to this is that although I think that a lot of, fans who follow the team fairly regularly, they can expect something like this. The problem with the Sharks is that they just have terrible attendance these days. And so that's why I am concerned that, it's going to take several years for them to get back into the playoffs. And again, it's not because of Greer. He's actually doing what he can to, mitigate the situation and buy some time here. But yeah, they were, I think, 28th or 29th in attendance this last year. The season before that, the COVID season, in California, those teams definitely suffered from it. And season tickets have just been dropping by quite a bit. I think since 2014, when the Sharks got reverse swept by the LA Kings. There's data behind that. I talked about this a year ago on my channel. And so I think that that's going to be something that you see maybe a subpar product on the ice initially, but I think it could be even worse from a business standpoint. So that's going to be another huge piece of the puzzle for Greer early on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, they're not playing in a college arena, so they still do actually have an NHL arena. And I'm sure that, as things start to come on the upswing, the Shark Tank will start to fill again as the team gets closer to being that playoff level contender that really they were for 15 or so years. It was a long stretch of good hockey in San Jose, and it's just a matter of time, hopefully, until it gets back to that.
Yeah, man, I miss it dearly, and it's crazy. It's like I'm making videos on YouTube when my team is at an all-time low here. I want to actually make videos when we're winning.
Yeah, no,
definitely. I'm always away from that, I guess.
Well, hopefully down the line, it's a really good come out of this rebuild and a positive product on the other side. But Nick, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. It was great to have you on and great to talk Sharks hockey. Thank you all so much.
It's been my pleasure, John. I'm sure we'll have a chance to work together soon. Enjoy the rest of the offseason. And hey, we're only about 7 weeks away from some NHL action.
Oh, man, I cannot wait. Can't wait to get streaming games again and just enjoying hockey for sure. So everybody, this is Nick from Twisted Wrister Hockey. Please check out his channel. Link down in the description below. Awesome hockey content. And you definitely will want to throw him a sub. So show some support. Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this San Jose Sharks offseason discussion. And we've got a few more of these coming as the offseason rolls along. And those will be coming out soon. So thank you guys so much for all the support. And we'll talk to you very, very soon. See you guys next time.